All right, welcome to today's episode of the Australian Lawn and Garden Podcast. People, I've dropped the ball. Well, I did drop the ball. Been dropping it for 2 months. We have an exclusive announcement, and you would think that we would have prioritized that. I would think that I would have prioritized that. If you're listening to the podcast with Ben Gripsky from the Gravely podcast, we did 2 with Ben. I started that podcast by saying, this is the last podcast of Makers Month. And at the end, we were like, I teased a little bit of an extra thing. It was on the fly decision to make it into a little extra podcast. In reality, we had done so many that month. I think it was 14 podcasts in a month or something, in like a 3-week period of time. Anyways, bit of a little bit more than we can chew, and never got around to releasing it. But here, in a second, is going to be that exclusive announcement about a cylinder mower. You should enjoy it. Now, it's just a mini episode. It's not going to take very long. Probably, well, definitely will be the shortest one we've ever done. Before we get into it, if you love the podcast and love what we're doing, and you would like to not see something like this happen again, do you know how you can do that? You can support on Patreon, because at the end of Makers Month, Patreon's paid for Makers Month. And we were zonked. We needed more help. If you like what we're doing here, every single dollar that I've ever gotten from Patreon has gone straight back into making better episodes, getting more episodes out there, making the content sustainable, so I'm not doing a million hours a week for no pay. But people, if you love the podcast, jump on the Patreon. Another way you can support is through the Lawn Shed. Hundreds of you have signed up to the Lawn Shed. Thank you so much for doing that. Every time you make a little purchase at the Lawn Shed and you signed up through saying that you heard about us through the Australian Lawn and Garden Podcast, I actually get a small little token payment from that, and that actually makes a big difference. So if you're the sort of person who has signed up and you're thinking about buying fertilizers, every time you buy from them, it actually helps me out a little bit if you clicked that you heard about them through the Australian Lawn and Garden Podcast. They've been a great business. It's literally where we buy everything from for our lawn care. So jump on there, find some great products, support the podcast, and without any further ado, you've been waiting long enough for this. Here is that little secret episode. All right, welcome to a little bonus episode of the Australian Lawn and Garden Podcast. We got Ben here for the 3rd time because we have an exclusive announcement you will see on our screens. He talks about in the Bush Ranger podcast that PLP were going to bring in a new mower to their range that had been available before. You mentioned that they probably hadn't been as well promoted or supported as possible, but here it is. Would you like to make the announcement, Ben?
So we are taking the Protea distribution away from All Mower Spares. Obviously, All Mower Spares is no longer. I'm pretty sure everyone's aware of that. We've always recognised this product as a very premium product. It's an exact Scott Bonner replica minus a centrifugal clutch. Very, very, very high build quality. So just quickly, that's 14, 17, 20. Anyone who's purchased a Protea mower from All Mower Spares, we are bringing in all of the ordered machines, and we're trying to get that packaged, finalised, and shipped right now. So there is machines sold out there. We have got them coming, and we do plan on carrying spare parts and servicing them properly. A couple of things for your cylinder mower crazy guys that these have that no one else has. If you get a greens version with the click height adjuster, 1/4 click is 0.25 of a mil. So 4 clicks is a mil. So you can actually yourself, and there's twin height adjusters, you can actually set those heights exactly, and you can adjust them exactly either way. They come fitted with Briggs or Honda options. The exact range we're going to bring to market still hasn't been finalised, but it also gives us a machine with a rubber rear roller, which is something we're missing at the moment, allowing us to roll them over your aggregated concrete driveways, sandstone tiles, all those sorts of things. So we're very excited for it. It's going to give us a very, very good quality cylinder mower into our range. We've got our consumer level machines. They are not going to be cheap. These are quality, very high quality machines. But yeah, we're hoping to have them here by February.
Awesome.
Okay.
Now, I'll
Right.
ask a few quick questions because this is a short little bonus podcast, people. We don't have the time to do everything on here. One thing I would ask is, this looks like it's a Robin engine. Is that right?
Yeah, so we won't be bringing that in with a Robin engine. We're looking at their website here, and without control of it, I can't see it. But we're bringing them in with Briggs and Honda. So a small Briggs and a Honda.
All right.
That's the little domestic SI. There's a 14-inch, a 17-inch, 20 and 25. We'll probably only be bringing in the 14, 17 and 20. If you go to the SIG range, so if you go up to machines, SIG range, that'll show you the Golf version, which has got that come down to the domestic range.
Domestic.
Is that where we are?
Oh, it's not on here.
Got to
There's
go
electric
through
one.
them.
Look,
Yeah,
this is
so-
not your website because you haven't
No,
officially
we haven't taken them on.
started
No,
this yet. So, but you
Yeah.
can tell us about it. All right, we're back, and it's me, Aloyne. So Ben's gone. Had technical issues, and unfortunately, it's running out of time. It was late at night over there. I want to tell you a little bit about the Protea stuff. I've got nothing to do with any of this, and these are my thoughts, not Ben Gripsky's or any of that of PLP. But a lot of people were worried about All Miles Spares because they had a reputation of being, what's the word, unreliable. They had a reputation of not fulfilling orders. They eventually did go bankrupt. People know that I have never had any dealings with anybody at All Miles Spares. I've never personally bought anything from there. I have had talks with people who dealt with that business and they were negative. And I think it's quite interesting that you have what is one of the most beloved cylinder mowers, the Scott Bonner, becoming available. And I do think it's interesting to find. Now, my personal opinion on this, I can't share because I haven't used one of these pieces of kit before. But it is a fascinating thing. And many of you will be interested because of your love of Scott Bonners, those old secondhand machines. This might be a great stepping stone for somebody who's starting out in business. They want to get into cylinder mowing. They want to use something on a part-time basis that is high quality, well respected, spare parts easy to get. There you go. So people, that's it. That is the whole Makers Month series. I think that's, I don't even want to count. I'll be honest with you. I'm kind of done. Like I'm exhausted from all these episodes. Next year, let me tell you about what we are going to do. Well, what I should say is let me tell you about what I want to do. For the Patreons, firstly, thank you so much. I hope that next year we have enough Patreons that we can not only afford an editor, but we can also afford admin assistance because I am limited in time. And that not just includes recording, but organizing. And there is a lot that goes on behind the scenes with organizing, getting these out, the social media, the posts, making it, the thumbnails. There's a lot of work. So my goal is next year. I think we had 16 or 17 brands, something like that on this year's one. My goal is next year to have 30. And for the entire month of November, to record these in advance and release them day by day for November. And my hope is that every year we have Makers Month in November, and it is literally daily for a month. If you have certain brands that you would like to get involved, send me a message. If there's somebody who you wanted on this podcast and a series that you didn't find and you wanted to have them, be a part of this, send me a message. The best place to do that is through the podcast's Instagram page. Now, the reason why you need to do it through the Instagram page and nowhere else is because it needs to be in one place for me. Otherwise, I'm going to forget them. If I have messages here, there, and everywhere, emails, Facebook messages, personal messages, blah, blah, please don't do that. If you have a specific brand, send me through there. And what I can do is I can then use those messages and honestly send me. I want hundreds, right? Like, even if you're all saying the same thing, if everyone's like, oh, I wanted still, for example, we use still as an example. I'll talk about the background stuff in a minute. I'll tell you some juicy, saucy stuff that you guys want to hear about why brands didn't come on. But say you want to have still and you think, oh, I'm not going to send a message because everybody else wants them. I can, if I have 10, I'll take 10 screenshots and I'll say, still, look, 10 people reached out. They wanted you on. 100 people reached out. They said they wanted you on. If you don't follow me on Instagram, do it. Follow me anyway, but send me a message. And I will personally reply to every single one that comes through. Even if there's 1,000, I'll do it. Again, I've not been getting sleep for the last couple of weeks. Why change it now? Let me tell you some saucy stuff about why people didn't come on. I don't want to throw anyone under the bus. The first thing is Still. Why did Still not come on? I want to say respectfully to them, and I am being respectful. They're lovely people there that I talked to. It was just a bad timing for them. And they were a fantastic. The human beings I dealt with there were fantastic. There was 2 of them. I won't name them, but fair call to them. We did try to organise something. Text messages, emails, back and forth. The message I got from them was it was a bad timing. We gave them about 6 weeks notice, and we were trying to do things that it just couldn't work because of international travel, things like that. They had originally said yes, and so they were keen. The attitude was there. They didn't fob us off. Other brands, I will not mention other brands. Some brands, though, told me they couldn't do it because they didn't have media training. Some brands replied with automatic messages saying, it was as if they thought I was wanting sponsorship or I was asking for money or something like that. The message didn't even relate to the question I had. And there was about 5, maybe 6 brands. There were some other brands that were based out of a different country and had a distributor here that the national brand or the brand based in the other country were keen to come on, and they couldn't get an Australian from their distributor to be interested for whatever reason. So there's just interesting stuff. A lot goes on. But what we're going to do is hopefully, if you sign up to Patreon, help me with this. It's important to me. Let me tell you why Patreon's important. You're probably going to switch off. It's probably the most boring part. Everyone's like, I'm off the podcast now. But why Patreon is important to me is, yes, we have a sponsor in the Lawn Shed, but the Lawn Shed is not a brand in terms of a single brand of products. There is a vast variety of products you can get. There is a whole range of dozens of fertilizers, liquid, granule, wetting agents, dozens of brands and manufacturers of herbicides and fungicides available through them. I kind of feel like that's a one-stop shop, and I don't have to take sides on fertilizer versus organic because they're both there. I don't have to take sides on, you get what I mean? Like, there's such a broad range. I can't really do that with equipment. And that's why this is a Patreon funded thing. It is literally was not possible without the Patreons. That's not an overstatement. I did not spend a single cent of any Patreon money until this series. And every single cent that I've gotten has been going through to the editor, right? Like, I haven't taken, if anybody's ever given me money, like on Patreon, it says buy Luca Pepsi Max or buy Luca Zinger Box. That's a joke. Every Pepsi Max. Let's be honest, there's not enough Patreon money to afford those expenses for me personally. I have to win the lottery to afford the rest of those ones. But no, the honest truth is that's a joke, and every single cent that's ever been done on Patreon has gone back into editing. Thankfully, we have had an uptick in people who have joined through the series. That's essentially what it's there for. This series is funded by human beings who listen to the podcast, meaning my financial incentive is to support the human beings who do the podcast. If I was sponsored by whoever, PLP, who we just had on, I'll throw them as a name. If PLP with Gravely or with Protea or with Bushranger or whoever they had on, if they sponsored the podcast series, it'd be very awkward when I was having the Skag conversation. Do you know what I mean? It'd be very awkward when I was having the Toro conversation. You guys understand this. So it is super important to me that the patrons be the main source of income for a series like this. With the Lawn Shed, in my agreement, if you guys don't know this, I made it incredibly important to me that I could have people who were ambassadors or employees of other fertilizer manufacturers, and they do not care at all. That's why they are a sponsor. If they said to us, the Lawn Shed will sponsor you, but you are not allowed to talk to a single soul from another business, I would feel like that control was too much for this type of podcast. So that's why it's Patreon funded. And if you guys have been thinking, hey, I should do that, please actually do that. Do you know what I mean? I know what it's like. You're working. I'm like this. You're working. You're out in the field. You're thinking, I'll do that later, and then it never happens. It's like, I'm like that all the time. But please actually do that. Jump on the Patreon, all kind of stuff. So send me a message. You know what this next year's series, we want it to be big, amazing. I'm blown away by how successful this series was. The numbers are fantastic. It's crazy how many people are listening to each episode, even though they're kind of cannibalizing themselves. Like, who can listen to a single episode every single day and not get bored of this content? So yes, anyways, people, message me, send me who you would love to have on. Maybe there's somebody out of left field I never thought about. We have 30 spaces next year. I am limiting it to those 30 spaces. So send me stuff. Be like, hey, there's this weird brand out of the middle of nowhere that does this thing. Cool, we'll get them on. There's this brand over there that does this. Fantastic, we'll get them on. Like, we'll do what we can. When we run out of spaces, we'll prioritize the most interesting or unique or innovative, the podcasts that are going to get the most interest from you guys. But yeah, and also thank you so much to the Patreons who paid for all this, who made this possible. The editing time is insane. It takes hours and hours and hours to do this every single episode. Couldn't thank you guys enough. And girls, I think. Actually, do I have a female Patreon? I don't think I do. Anyways, on that sexist sentimentality, which I hope is not going to get me cancelled. Please, people. I'm waffling now. This is getting useless. This is what happens when I'm on my own. Anyways, enjoy your life. Don't do drugs. See you guys in the next podcast.